another clip. Okay, so let me ask you another question. Can you tell us about your 2 years as refugees before you boarded the Exodus ship?
2 years before I boarded the Exodus. Well, my 2 years before I boarded the Exodus were actually in Germany. We were smuggled from Poland to Germany in 1945, end of 45, beginning of 46, put in a kind of a village very near an outskirts of Munich, which was originally built for families or officers of the SS. Jewish soldiers of the American army and officers, Jewish officers of the American army, threw out actually all those families, and we were put instead of them. The conditions were very good, and we had a teacher which was sent from Palestine, from Kibbutz En Shemer. She actually was teaching us, her name was Geula. She was teaching us Hebrew a little bit and about Eretz Israel, about Palestine, map of Palestine, places in Palestine, etc., etc. Most probably I was a very good student. So one day she called me and said, after we finished our school, the school was one class for all the children from the age of 7 or 8 till the age of 18. She called me and she said, look, we are going to have a very, very important and famous visitor. He was actually the commander of the Allied forces who liberated Europe. And his name is General Eisenhower. Well, I didn't know what she's talking about, actually. So I said, yeah, what I have to do with it? She said, you will, one of our national poet, the song which is called, the poem which is called El Hatzipor, to the bird, 3 chapters, you will read them to the general. From that moment, for about 2 weeks or 10 days or whatever it was, I didn't sleep, I didn't eat, I didn't play with my friends. I was so excited. And I learned it as a puppet. Simple as that. I learned those 3 chapters as a puppet. The name came with all the hoo-ha, with the tikva and everything. And the time came that Shaya was called to say those 3 chapters. I was very, very excited, and it was perfect. But in the end, General Eisenhower stood up, gave me a kiss on my head, and I said to myself, as being a boy, I said, what a funny world. He doesn't understand a word, that I can understand, but I don't understand the word, what I said. Anyhow, we continued to be there. One day my father came and said, we are going to Palestine. There's a ship with children, pregnant women, old people. The British, it's illegal of course, but the British will never, of course, not stop it. And because of, I don't know what, maybe his connections, because he could arrange everything, my father, we are going on that ship. Again on our Peklech, as we say, to south of France. I remember we went through Nuremberg, which was nothing there. We came to a place, a deserted camp of the French army, which was on an upper hill. From that place we could see all the Riviera, with the beautiful houses, with tennis courts, with swimming pools. I never saw it in my life. And after a few days, again on trucks, the interesting thing, that, as far as I remember, all the trucks from Munich to south of France, and then from south of France from the camp to the ship were American trucks driven by Jewish American soldiers. And there we boarded a black ship, which was called Haganah ship, Yetziat Europa Tashaz, Exodus 1947.
Who was on the ship and what were conditions like on the ship?
On the ship, as I said before, were a lot of youth, orphans, which we called youth chalutzim, and old people, pregnant women, and families with children, with small children, pregnant women, because the brother who stayed alive was with us. His wife, he married there in Neufreimann, in that camp, she was pregnant. That was, I believe, that was one of the reasons that we were on the ship. Anyhow, the conditions were back as we used to be in Kazakhstan. We were put on the ship on kind of boards. I was sleeping on an upper board with my brother and his wife, which was pregnant. I remember one thing, that from the beginning, urine was dumping on me because the ship was in unbelievable condition. The food, it's a long story how the ship got out from the harbor because the French authorities, as a result of the pressure of the Brits, didn't allow the ship to get out from the harbor, but the food was terrible. We had food which was food as you have as soldiers in the front are eating. Everything in cans and things like that, biscuits and things like that. Anyhow, and again, we found ourselves with lice, which after many years, after 4 or 5 weeks, we got rid of them, but here again they were. And this was the crowd on board Exodus 1947 with those 4,500 illegal immigrants, which all the hope they had is to reach the coast of Palestine and to get on the ground of Palestine, Eretz Israel.
What was the reaction when you were told by the British Navy that you were not to be allowed to enter the land of Israel, your homeland, which was then known as Palestine?
Well, the reaction was that we are going to not to obey the orders, although we were surrounded by 9 battleships, which the flagship was the Prince of Wales, very famous battleship of the Second World War. And we went on, the ship went on. I was a child, so a boy. And by the end of the day, the 2 of the destroyers were coming very close from both sides to the Exodus. From both sides they kicked her, the ship, and the Royal Marines started trying to get on top the Exodus. So all the people that were the youths and so on were fighting. The weapons were cans of food, potatoes, oil, not burnt oil, just bottles of oil. And I was not a soldier, quote unquote, but I was delivering the ammunition, bringing from the bottom of the ship cans and potatoes and whatever, and giving it to the soldiers, until about 4, 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. The resistance stopped because they were using weapons, the British Marines. They boarded the ship. They tried to find the captain and the commander of the Haganah, but they were not there anymore. And the ship was towed by two destroyers. The ship was half broken, was towed by two destroyers to the port of Haifa.
And can you tell us about the 1939 British government white paper that sealed the anti-Semitic British policy towards the Jewish people?
Well, I tell you, I was in in those days I was a little boy, but from what I read, I can only tell you what I read. I was not in a position that I could, but I know that the white paper said very simple, that no Jews can anymore immigrate to Palestine. There was a quota, which I don't remember what was the amount of people, I can't remember, but there were maybe 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 per year, something like that. And in those days started actually the underground operating in Palestine, which was actually three organizations. Always undergrounds cannot work as one organization. There were three organizations, the Haganah, the Etzel, and the Lehi. And they were also the ones who were fighting when a ship arrived close to the coast. Some ships, the immigrants, by the help of the Haganah or whoever else, escaped from the Brits and were taken immediately to kibbutzim and places like that. But we, as I was told, were sold back to Germany, and most of the ships, the immigrants, were sent to Cyprus. We were the only ones to send back to Germany, because Bevin, the foreign minister of Great Britain, there is a quotation of his words, I cannot say exactly, but something like that. I will learn those bloody bastards, the bloody Jews, that I can take them back to the place that they will love, quote unquote.
Many believe that hundreds of thousands of lives could have been saved from the Holocaust but for these British policies. Do you agree?
Not only the British, but I would say mainly the Americans, and mainly the President of the United States, the most famous president. I appreciate him as being the one who won the war, but still his wife was known as an anti-Semite. I mean Roosevelt. And I always say, because all my life I was in the air, was flying and so on and so on, I always say that three B-17s, bombers B-17s, on Auschwitz to bomb the cemeteriums and all those killing, the murdering places, would save at least the Hungarian Jews, at least. It could be done even before, so we would say more than that. But at least they could save the Hungarian Jews. They bombed the Farben, I can't remember exactly the name of the firm, which was about 6-7 kilometers southwest of Auschwitz. They flew over Auschwitz, but they didn't bomb Auschwitz. Also, the Brits the same, but mainly Mr. Roosevelt.
Let me start another clip here.